All right, so we're going to move into the last presentation for your first test or exam A for Unit 6, which is going to be learning targets 9 through 13. It's going to deal with the skeletal, muscular, and integumentary systems. Not as long as the nervous system presentation, but it's still a little long. So we'll start with the skeletal system, and the skeletal system is going to be used to support the body. It's also going to be used to protect all major organs inside the body. It also allows movement of the organism, and it's also a source of mineral reserves and blood cell formation. So, the first thing we think of when we think of the skeletal system is support. Okay, we think of bones, giving us or other animals support, the ability to stand up, press ourselves up off the ground, whether it be with 2 legs, 4 legs, whatever it may be. And that is correct, but there's so many other functions that the skeletal system provides. And the big one we talked about as far as animal evolution was concerned was the protection of major organs. Think about your rib cage or rib cage of any organism. Inside that rib cage are vital things to life, meaning the heart and the lungs. Those two things, life cannot happen without it. So the rib cage provides, and bones provide protection for the organs that are necessary for life. So there's two divisions of the of skeletal system in any animal. You have the axial skeleton, which is your skull, backbone, and ribs. And then you have your appendicular skeleton, which is the shoulders, arms, hips, and legs. Much like the divisions of the nervous system, whatever is central, okay, is normally its own division. Then everything else around it that attaches to it is an or is another division. So a couple of important vocab terms when it comes to bone anatomy. You have osteocytes, which are bone cells. Okay, so that's a scientific name for bone cells. It's osteocytes. The perostem is a tough outer covering of the bone. The haversian canals are holes that go through the bone. Osteoclasts are cells that break down and recycle old bone tissue. Osteoblasts are cells that build up new bone tissue. Okay, so don't get osteoclasts and osteoblasts mixed up. Then you have bone marrow, and in animals, there's two different types of bone marrow. You have red marrow, which is where new blood cells are going to be created. And then you have yellow marrow, which is mostly fat and insulation and some nutrient storage. All right, so you also have cartilage, and cartilage is tough but flexible connective tissue that gives support and protection while being flexible. We talked about what connective tissue is. A lot of times, some cartilage is mistaken as bones. Sometimes, over a lifespan of an organism, cartilage will turn into bone. We'll talk about what that is here in a minute. And some areas, like around the ear, for instance, in this picture, the horse's ear, it's going to stay cartilage for the entire lifespan of that animal. So ossification is the process of cartilage becoming bone. This can happen in some areas as the organism grows in age. Sometimes it's referred to growth plates closing. All right, it's very similar. Some cartilage remains throughout the entire lifespan of the organism, like ears around the nose, that area will stay cartilage for the entire lifespan of the organism. All right, types of joints. There are 5 types of joints in the skeletal system. First one's going to be the ball and socket. And this is the connection between 2 bones. That is a literal ball and socket, and the best example of this is the hip joint. And we'll show you a picture on the next slide. Then you have a hinge joint, and this is when one bone fits inside another bone and swings on one axis. The example is your elbow. You have a pivot joint, and this is when one bone fits inside or on another and allows for pivot movement. Forearm bones are a great example of this. The spine, okay, the vertebrae in the spine are a good example of pivot joints. Then you have a saddle joint. This is when one bone rests on another, much like a rider on a horse, and allows for stability but flexibility. An example is the thumb on the hand. The thumb joint is just sitting on the hand like a horse rider. And then the last one, the one that's often forgotten because it's not movable. We think about joints. We think about being able to move joints. You have immovable joints. These are joints that do not move. An example are the joints in your skull. And there are different bones that make up your skull. They have joints, but they're immovable. They don't move. So you can see ball and socket joint here, hinge joint here. The middle is going to be the pivot joint. Okay, sits on top and kind of are inside and just kind of moves around. This is your well, I'm drawing a blank here. Your saddle joint. I'm sorry, we're gonna call it the rider joint, but I knew that wasn't right. The saddle joint, much like a rider on a horse, and then your immovable joints, the different bones that make up a skull. Went one too far. All right, so ligaments are also connective tissues that connect bone to bone. Keep that in mind. You have to be able to distinguish the difference between ligaments and tendons. Ligaments connect bone to bone. I'll say it again. Ligaments are connective tissues that connect bone to bone. So then we move into the muscular system. We have a nice muscular looking bull there, a healthy looking bull. The muscular system is going to be used to move the body as well as organs and other materials within the body. So you have two different types of systems within the muscular system. First one's going to be the voluntary muscles, which can be moved through conscious thought. For example, picture here flexing your muscles. That's a conscious decision you're making to do, and that is one area or one side of the muscle system. And then you have involuntary muscles that these do not require conscious thought in order to function. Examples when you breathe. You don't have to tell the muscles in your diaphragm around your lungs to expand or contract to force in and air in or out of your lungs, or your stomach to contract to move food through it, your intestines to contract to move waste through it. Those happen on their own. That's involuntary muscles. All right, so I said you need to know the difference between ligaments and tendons. Ligaments connect bone to bone. Tendons connect muscle to bone. Big difference, okay? And you need to know that. Again, ligaments, bone to bone. Tendons, connective tissues that connect muscle to bone, which is important in order to move the bones. All right, so how do muscles contract? It's actually, sorry, I went on the bell. Muscles contract in a way that most things happen within the body, which is going to be diffusion of particles or ions across a membrane, which is going to cause things to pull or push or get closer together or further apart. So the neuromuscular junction is the area where the nerve and the muscle cell meet. And we go back to action potential. Okay, so when action potential with that electric pulse reaches the synaptic terminal of an action that connects to the muscle, okay, so we're getting ready to cross the synapse with an electrical impulse, with a message, right? The neurotransmitter acetylcholine is released into the synapse. And remember, the synapse is the space in between cells. Acetylcholine binds to channels on the muscles, which then opens those channels, allowing sodium to come into the muscle cell, causing an action potential or a new electrical impulse. The action potential The action potential travels down the length of the muscle cell until it reaches a T-tubule, which goes into the cell towards the specialized endoplasmic reticulum. This specialized ER releases calcium ions, which then bind to actin filaments, causing them to expose myosin binding sites. Okay? And once these sites are exposed, this is where we're going to start seeing the contraction of muscles. And that's where we're going next. So here we go back to a neuromuscular junction. The chemical signals being sent across the synapse, taken in by the muscle, turning back into action potential, which is going to open up binding sites to cause the muscle to be able to contract or relax. So this carries us into muscle contraction. So we pick back up at the myosin binding sites that are exposed. The myosin heads bind to them and then pull the actin. It continues to pull until it's completely contracted. There are two filaments that do this. You have myosin, which are thick filaments, and actin, which are thin filaments. And let's just say slide, not side. They slide past one another, shortening the entire muscle. When you contract the muscle gets closer together, gets smaller. When calcium ions are no longer present, the fibers will release, allowing the muscle to relax. This is called the sliding filament model. So the movement of and the presence of calcium ions is what causes muscles to contract or relax. And here you see as it's bound or binding, myosin head is binding to the filaments. thin filaments, thick filaments. It's pulling, pushing, relaxing, whatever's needed for a contraction or a lack thereof. Integumentary system is going to be skin, okay, skin coverings. And this is everything that skin produces, like hair, nails, and a few types of glands. There's two divisions of this system. The first one is the epidermis, which is going to be the outer layer. And this is going to be covered by dead cells for protection and a layer of stem cells underneath, which continues to replenish the cells that are lost. It's not hard to lose skin cells, and they must constantly be replaced for the protection. Remember, stem cells have the ability to become whatever is needed in that area. Then we have this product that's produced called keratin, and it's produced by cells in the epidermis to create hair and nails and some horns in some animals like this gazelle. So your fingernails are made of keratin. And the other division is the dermis, and this is where you're going to find the nerves, blood vessels, and other glands in the skin. Sweat glands are found here, which is going to secrete water in some mammals to cool the body off. Sebaceous glands are found also in some mammals that secretes an oily substance to protect the skin and keep it from drying out. And that is the end of all of the presentations for your first test, which is going to be here in a few days. Be sure you complete the form that goes with this, and if you have questions, please let me know. Thank you.